All right, it's 3:00, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm Dr. Sharon Milgram, and I'm the director of the Office of Intramural Training and Education here at NIH. And I'm going to be taking us through the entire Resilient Scientist series. I hope to be here for all of the lectures. We will alternate lecture, small group discussion, lecture, small group discussion through 5 units. This course was developed during the pandemic, based actually on a series of workshops that I did that ended with very long Q&A sessions. They went on for a very long time. Fellows across the United States and internationally brought up a variety of issues on their minds. I spent a long time watching and rewatching the tapes from those sessions, and with help from OITE well-being advisors, put together this series. We developed a parallel series for new managers and for PIs. So we offer a parallel program called Raising a Resilient Scientist that takes a lot of the same principles and tries to teach it to help managers mentor and support fellows. I want to acknowledge that a large number of people have worked on this program, especially sitting right here in the room. Uli Klink, who is really responsible for making it work. So it was an idea that took a lot of work. And Uli said, you know, I'm pretty interested in this, and she's made it work. So if you have a moment at some point in the series, drop her a quick email with a thank you. I also want to say that I read emails from people who have taken parts of this course years ago. So we offered it many, many times through the pandemic, literally just in a cycle. We finish, we take a break, we offer it again. And a lot of people reflect that they either didn't complete the course or thought they'd started but chose not to, and finally they're doing it. And there was a lot of reflection that the honest truth is these are helpful skills, and I wish that I had maybe been able to see it through. I appreciate the many, many things tugging on your time, right? You have research work, you have applications, the world is messy, and we all want to contribute to making it better. We have personal lives, we need to take care of ourselves, and we can feel like we have no time. The lectures will all be taped. I will stay and do Q&A after. If you need to go, just go. You can come back later or never come back. But I encourage you to try to stick with the entire series, and I especially encourage you to consider joining us at the groups. We will publish a paper soon on the benefits of this program through a pretty large assessment done twice in 2 rounds. And it's very, very clear that these are helpful skills and that people are really glad that they participated. So I just want to start with 2 slides that sort of answer the question, why are we doing this? This is a lot of time. So, you know, the honest truth is science is challenging. Actually, all jobs are challenging. Life is challenging. Engaging in teams is challenging. And the question isn't whether you will face challenges. The questions really are, what challenges, when will they happen, how many, how serious will they be? Will you experience a setback that really could have a long-term dramatic impact on your progress? What are the potential consequences? It isn't will this happen, it's when and how often. Between work and life, we all face ups and downs, and unfortunately, lots more downs than ups at some points in our work. So I think that's not the most memorable slide, but maybe this one is a little bit more memorable. So when I think about my career in science, when I think of all the mentoring I have done of emerging scientists and healthcare providers, I actually think of everything that has to be accomplished sort of as a series of bridges. We have to get to point A, from point A to point B. We have to write an abstract, get it approved, submit it in time. We have to go to RPI and say, this is not working for me. Can we change it and do something a little bit differently? We have to finish writing grant applications. Graduate students have to finish writing their qualifying exams, convincing their committee, et cetera. The group in its entirety, each of you could probably imagine 4 or 5 things right now that need to happen. Now, every once in a while, we are super lucky and it goes really easily, like that beautiful bridge over in the corner. We could stop and look at the ducks. Maybe we could feed the ducks. It's pretty easy. If it's a little slippery, no big deal. Look at those really nice things to hold on to. And every once in a while, it is that bridge in the middle, which I call the wobbly bridge. Let's be honest, not so much fun to walk across. It's swaying in the wind. Maybe there's a broken piece of wood. Maybe it's in the shade and it's super icy. And we just imagine once. Oh, we lost our, oh, there we go. We slide and, suddenly we are really caught in a tight spot. And the honest truth is, in the kinds of careers that you are all considering and aspiring for, and the type of work we do here at NIH, and frankly, in all other parts of our life, very, very often, there is no bridge at all. Now, some of you look at those rocks. That happens to be the headwaters of the Mississippi, by the way, right where the Mississippi starts in Minnesota. So if any of you are from Minnesota, you might have actually visited that national park. To get from one side to the other, you have to skip rocks. Now, I don't know about you, but I like to joke I was born and raised on cement, and the idea of stepping over and through those rocks is terrifying to me. So as easy as it should have been, lots of kids were just scampering across. I was actually unable to get all the way across. Many times in our careers, we are actually trying to accomplish something with no bridge at all. We have to stand on one end and figure out how to get to the other end. Now, the most ironic part of that picture is about 20 feet over to my right, someone had laid a big board so that people who didn't want to skip the rocks could get across the Mississippi anyway. But I was so stressed by those rocks, I never looked 20 feet over. So when we are facing that wobbly bridge or no bridge at all, very, very often our stress levels go up, our creative problem solving goes down, and we are stuck really caught. Life is a series of bridges. Our work is a series of bridges. If we're lucky, we get to rest in between. And if we're lucky, every once in a while, we get that really nice bridge and something goes as smoothly as we hoped. This teaches us really about resilience. Each and every one of us needs to be prepared for the wobbly bridge or for no bridge at all. It teaches us something else. Every once in a while, we have to be willing to put out our hand and say, we need help getting across this wobbly bridge. So reaching out our hand for help is an important concept. Likewise, reaching out our hand to help others as they're navigating no bridge at all or the wobbly bridge is important. That is especially important as we grow in our career and become mentors. Right? We have to be able to reach out our hand and say, those rocks are slippery, let me give you a hand. But there's a lot of caveats. If all we're doing is helping others, we don't help ourselves. On the other hand, if we right away say, I need help, we're not growing and learning ourselves. So there are caveats, and there needs to be balance between I'm going to push myself and try this, as wobbly as that bridge is. It has to be balanced with, wait a minute, way too wobbly right now. I'm not in the right place. I really need some help. Resilience is knowing how to do that with some grace and calm. There's a lot of learning to be found when we skip the rocks or on the wobbly bridge, but we will not find that learning unless we have the right support unless we're curious about ourselves and the way we learn, unless we take care of ourselves, and unless we practice. So the course is about giving you concepts. It's about giving you a place to explore those concepts together with a community of people in similar situations. And it's a way of giving you tools that you need to navigate your career and eventually to help others navigate their career. So I'm actually a cell biologist by training. I have a PhD in cell biology and anatomy. I ran a lab for a long time. I am not an expert in resilience. I am an expert in the cell biology of polarized cells. But I have been doing graduate and postdoc and postbac and undergraduate education now for 20 plus years. And it is very clear to me that this is a skill that we are needing to teach. We should have been teaching it long ago. And I want to thank those of you coming because if we want to change the culture of science, and if we want to make science really open and accessible to all, we have to teach skills beyond the actual subject matter. If you think about it, I will often give you little mnemonics to remember, pictures to pull on. I'm going to give you the first one, inner resource, learning resilience, learning how to talk ourselves down when we want to turn around rather than skip the stones. So inner resource plus external support, community, mentors, support outside and inside of our research space and workspace leads to or equals positive coping strategies. So when we face a challenging time, we can move through it as calmly as possible. And in fact, that is exactly what resilience is. People sometimes in their mind have a picture of one of those toys weighted down where you hit it and it bounces right back up. They think that's what resilience is. I get hit, I bounce up, I keep going. Resilience is actually something much more nuanced than that. It's the ability for us to calmly navigate difficult challenges and to adapt and grow through adversity. In fact, sometimes resilience is saying, not going to try that again, not going to do it that way this time. I tried to skip the stones alone, and it was a bad idea. So resilience is really a set of attitudes and behaviors that we learn and develop through three things: education, like these types of courses; self-reflection, we start asking ourselves, who am I? What resilience skills do I have? What resilience skills do I lack? How do I want to develop them? How do I want to use them when I am really stressed? And then practice. None of us do this really elegantly unless we practice. So if we say all good right now, let me forget that material, right? I don't need to go to the resilience course. Everything just feels great right now. I have a series of beautiful bridges ahead of me. If we do that, when we hit the wobbly bridge, we're not going to be ready. Resilience starts at the top, and we say this all the time to PIs, but all of you are leaders and mentors within your groups, right? Even if you don't have delegated leadership by the institution, earlier career scientists and your colleagues and peers engage with you. And so it's really nice to think about, we should model, teach, and talk about resilience to support others, whether that's supporting your peers or more junior people when you have a summer intern, right? In general, we should learn about resilience for ourselves and to support others. And I think that that's a really important concept. One last model, and then we're going to dive into more material. This comes from a book from Ken Blanchard called Self-Leadership and the 1-Minute Manager. I was caught at the airport. My plane was very delayed, and I was very irritated. It was one of those days when I had no resilience at all, and my frustration was sky high. And I finally took a deep breath and said, I cannot control this icy weather, but I can control how I spend the next many hours that I get to sit at the airport. So I bought a couple books. And this one figure really changed the way I think about supporting people in coming to research, growing their skills, deciding what their next step is. And it says essentially that we often begin something really enthusiastically. We start an internship. Those of you brand new postbacs, brand new grad student, postdoc, it's so exciting. This is so great. It's gonna be really awesome. And we start out really enthusiastic. Our confidence is pretty high. Now, maybe our competence is not that high, right? We haven't been there yet. We don't know what's expected of us. Lots of new skills. NIH is a big, messy place. Those of you from other universities, your institution is also a big, messy place, right? So we don't really quite have the competence to navigate, and what we really need is direction. We really need people to support us as we start. Now, eventually, sometimes very fast, literally minutes after we begin, sometimes weeks in, we hit this place where we realize, uh-oh, this is a big challenge. I like some things about my group, but not other things. Or this course is way harder than I thought. I certainly hit the disillusioned learner phase in grad school about a week into biochemistry when the teacher said, by the way, if you've never had biochemistry, you're in for a really rough ride. And I suddenly went like, ooh, not only have I not had biochemistry, but I can't actually remember when I had chemistry. I'm not ready for this. And I become a disillusioned learner. This is too hard. I don't like this. It's not going the way I had hoped. Now, the thing is, no big deal if it's not important to us. We could just say, oh, the hell with it, and walk away. But let's say it's something really important. I needed to pass biochemistry to stay in grad school. I can't give in to the disillusioned learner phase. You do a practice MCAT, it doesn't go well. If you stop, you don't get to go on and apply to med school. If you don't submit your grant, it will never get funded. So there are times we have to hold on. The funny thing is, often in the disillusioned learner phase, our competence is actually higher. We just don't feel it because our confidence is plummeted, and we need a lot of support. What happens here is resilience. If we persist and make good choices moving forward, we are a resilient learner, and we have the chance of moving on. We hit the cautious performer stage and sometimes even the high achiever stage. Now, sometimes we realize this isn't that important right now. I'm going to put it aside, right? So disillusioned learner stage and resilience doesn't mean we always persist. It means we decide carefully, how important is this? What am I going to do about it? Do I need to tackle it differently? And what differently will look like for me? So that's another way to think about the model. There's some problems with this. And that is that it implies some things about not changing direction that are risky. So I'm going to define what resilience isn't. All right. I just talked about what it is. It is not working to exhaustion because work is important. And I see a lot of people make that mistake. It is not persisting no matter what. Sometimes the answer is, right now, that bridge is way too wobbly. I can't do it right now, or it's not actually as important as my interests have changed. Who knows? But it's not persisting no matter what. It is deciding with calm intention whether to persist differently, or whether to say, not right now. One last thing, we work in a very hierarchical environment, right? Not just at NIH, all academic environments are very hierarchical. Many work environments are hierarchical outside of the research space. And sometimes we think resilience is just letting people ignore our boundaries and treat us poorly because we have a goal. In fact, resilience is not that. Resilience is knowing when we need to speak up, how to speak up, who to speak up to. In fact, we added in assertiveness sort of after the fact. We started with all of these self-management skills. And then I realized that no one can be assertive until they learn how to set boundaries. And that is so hard in hierarchical environments. And so we'll spend a lot of time talking on that. So resilience is not persisting no matter what. It's not hiding from our problems. It's not saying okay when we don't mean it. It is about a calm, intentional way of deciding, how do I handle this very messy bridge I face today? One more simple equation to keep in mind: resilience equals people, getting support, talking about things, knowing who to go to, plus process, learning about the skills needed to develop an inner resource, plus preparation, practicing in lower stakes environments, practicing when it feels less intense in the moment. Also preparation, meaning we take care of ourselves all the time. Because when we are burned out and overstressed, we are not creative. And I'm going to stress that again and again. It takes creativity to solve problems. It takes creativity to know how to deal with that bridge, right? I am just totally sort of shocked that I didn't think to look right and left. Also, I was with two people who really cared about me. If I had said to either of them, you know, I hate skipping stones. Actually, they both know that, right? If I had said to either of them, I hate doing this, but everybody crosses the Mississippi. That's what you come here for, right? One of them would have helped me. When we're stressed, we don't think to ask for help. So we have to practice so that we can manage our stress. So I'm going to do, I think it's 7. I don't actually know that for a fact, so we'll see how many it is. But I think it's 7 things to think about in terms of developing resilience. We're going to cover a few of them today really superficially and a few of them in depth. But by the end of the course, my hope is we have covered all of them. So the first is that to be resilient, we have to learn from previous experiences, both positive and negative. So we have to ask ourselves, at times when I was really resilient and I solved a big problem, what did I do? What didn't I do? How did I accomplish that? And likewise, in times when we really didn't do so well, when we look back and say, I wasn't my most shining self in that moment, right? I wasn't resilient. I got upset. I let my frustration get the better of me. I let my anger get the better of me. I hid from my problem because I just didn't have the resilience. So what was it about that time? So we learn resilience by exploring previous experiences. 2 concepts. So self-awareness is key in all of this, okay? We are really naturally drawn to some things. Some things come easy for us. Some things come harder for us. Some things come really hard for us. And we're all a mix. So first is self-awareness. But the second concept is this word that many people don't like, and that is compassion. Compassion is like being uniquely kind, okay? It's being soft in the moment on ourselves. A lot of us were trained, raised, taught to be really hard on ourselves. Oh, if you push, it will be better. And yes, at times we truly do have to push. But there's also an element of compassion, accepting who we are. Yeah, I got flaws. Yeah, I don't do that as well. I wish it came easier. I want to work on it, but I can't beat myself up. A lot of us were trained to beat ourselves up, and we think it's highly motivating, and it might have been one time or another. But in general, to really develop the resilience needed to succeed in the kinds of careers you're all choosing, we have to find some space for accepting who we are in a calmer, more accepting way. So that's number 1. And I'm going to talk later at the end about how to build this. We're not going to do it right now. Now, number 2 is the people part of resilience equals people plus process plus preparation, We have to build strong, positive relationships with peers and mentors. The hardest part of this course is the small groups. The best part of this course is the small groups, because you build a network of people that you can rely on. We are, as humans, hardwired to connect. Yet we often get messages that we should solve problems on our own. And there is a fine line between relying on others too much and relying exclusively on ourselves too often that each of us needs to navigate. But we are hardwired to connect. This is an intense academia and research and healthcare careers are intense environments where we often hear things like, you should know that. People at your stage should be able to do that. When you're successful, you will do that without any help. You should think about science in the shower, right? We hear a lot of shoulds. And when we hear that very, very often, what it does usually is make us hide. Why? Because we feel shame. Well, I should have known that, but I didn't, right? Maybe I should have had biochemistry as an undergraduate. I probably should have, but I didn't, right? And I struggled in biochemistry because of that. But instead of hiding, which is what I did, I should have gone to the teacher, right? There's another should. So, right, we tell ourselves shoulds all the time. Maybe it would have been better, I'll reword that, for me to go to the teacher and say, what do you think I should do? I've never had biochemistry. And maybe I would have got some ideas. Instead, I hid, because that's what we do when we're embarrassed and ashamed, right? I hid, and then I finally reached my qualifying exam and I wasn't ready, so I got to do it again. Now, in the end, here I am. I had a big lab. I had a pretty successful career as a scientist. I loved this job especially, right? I'm okay, but it would have been better not to have gone through an entire failure of a qualifying exam in grad school. It was a bumpy time, and it came from that desire to hide. So I like something called the rule of opposites. When I feel like hiding, I should consider or explore reaching out. Maybe not immediately. Maybe I need a day or two to feel a little bit, my disappointment, etc. Maybe I'm not in control of my emotions yet, so I don't want to talk to somebody. But opposite. When I feel I should hide, I need to consider talking to someone. Who? That's a big question. That's a part of our resilience. Who are my support, right? So remember that. Build strong, positive relationships with peers and mentors. And the third is what I said in that resilience equals people plus process plus preparation. We have to be proactive and use resources to thrive. Now, you are all here, so in some ways I am preaching to the choir, right? But remember that as the semester gets busy and you say, oh, I'll just ignore that. Or next year when you're really struggling and think, oh, I would benefit from a resilience refresher in OITE, right? Oh, I'm too busy for that. We need to use resources all the time to thrive. Not so many that we ignore our primary work, right? And there is some decision-making process about what resource will be best for us in the moment. But in general, we need to use resources to thrive. So I want to spend a minute. You can pull out your phones if you haven't. I know there's lots of people online, so you will also be able to participate. I want everyone to think for a moment, what are some of the barriers that keep you from using helpful resources? Okay, in the past or now, just think about what are the barriers. And the really easy way to do this is you just snap a picture of the QR code and it will take you to Slido and let you type in your response. Don't add lots of extraneous words. It's a lot easier just to get to the heart of the matter, or you can just go to slido.com and you put in that number. So we see already a lot of time, myself, ignorance, judgment, right? We judge ourselves. That would be a lack of compassion. In fact, I think in some ways, if you wanted to think of the opposite of compassion, it would be judgment, embarrassment. There's pride, right? There is something that feels good about solving things on our own, right? When we navigate that treacherous bridge and we get to the end and we did it ourselves, it feels good, right? Feeling no one cares, feeling overwhelmed by everything, embarrassment. And somebody acknowledged prior trauma, right? Whether that's childhood trauma or trauma in another research group. I think we have to acknowledge if we were in a group where it wasn't safe to go ask for help, we won't ask for help in our new group. So there's a lot of different things here coming up. There is also some things about awareness. So for those of you at NIH, we do email you, I think, almost every day. You must be irritated by hearing from OITE, and it says today in the OITE. You don't have to read all of them, but you might read most of them, right? Or you can always go to our website. If you are watching from a university, learn about what's on your campus, but also look at what OITE offers that you can participate in. There's 200 or so YouTube videos. There's things that are open to people outside. We are aware of how busy you are, so we tape many things. You can watch it later. And so make sure you know your resources. There are a few things here about imposter syndrome. I will use the language imposter fears, and we will talk about them in depth next session, but without a doubt, for many people, that feeling of I don't belong, I'm really an imposter, I don't want them to realize that I don't know this is one of the reasons. So lots of different things here. I'm going to give about 10 more seconds for people to go ahead and finish. And then I'm going to show you old data that bins this for us. And let me just say that the first time I asked this, my expectation was time would be the biggest factor, that we are all just too busy. But what we saw instead was that fear and shame and all of those things mentioned by many of you is by far the biggest barrier, which I think is unfortunate because science environments are learning environments. And certainly if you're in a training program, right, you're here to learn. Yet somehow we all have this message that we have to come in knowing everything. Right? So when we hit the disillusioned learner phase here, we just don't know where to turn because we think we have to figure it out on our own. Now, no time was second. Lots of other things are on this list, some really, really important ones that we'll cover. But I guess the take-home message that I want each of you to walk away with is every time you think, I shouldn't reach out, I should figure this out on my own, you are surrounded by lots of other people doing the exact same thing, right? And it often leads to unfortunate outcomes. The bridge is slipperier. Okay, I don't even know if that's a word. The bridge is more slippery. It is more treacherous. There are fewer big rocks when you have to skip alone, and you get to experience that beautiful bridge a lot less often. And in a hierarchical environment, I understand why people feel fear and shame, which means that we all have to work to examine and reframe our views on reaching out for support, asking questions, and using resources. So where do they come from? Why are we doing it that way? Are we really certain that it's the best way? Should I really navigate this bridge on my own, or would this be a good time to ask? The other thing is we need to remember to model these behaviors for others. When we are open and say, hey, I'm going to go to the resilience group and talk about this material, we are freeing somebody else to go. When we say, I struggled, and so I took a course, online or through FAES or wherever, and it helped me, we are modeling for others, right? When we say, I can't skip the rocks either, so my friend helped me, right? We're modeling for others. Change really starts with us. A lot of us would like the culture of science to change, right? And we are a part of that change. Now, the next two bullets we are going to go into in a lot of depth and detail over the entire rest of the course. We're going to talk about our self-talk, which is often distorted. We are sometimes an excessive critic. We are sometimes an excessive inner champion, and we talk, oh, it's fine. It's not my problem. It'll go away. So we're going to talk a lot about distorted self-talk. But along with distorted self-talk comes a lot of emotions that sometimes can be downright uncomfortable. Nobody wants to feel embarrassment. When we feel sad, it can be very challenging to sit with that. And I think frustration and embarrassment and anger are really big issues when it comes to learning, whether we are angry at ourselves or someone else. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And the reason why we're going to talk about our thoughts and our feelings comes from this model, which was really the development of cognitive behavioral therapy. And it tells us that what we think affects how we feel and act. How we feel affects what we think and do. And what we do affects how we think and feel. All right. Now, that's not helpful if we can't intervene, right? If this is just an uncontrollable loop, it's not helpful. But if you think about it, we have a lot of control over our behaviors. We can become very, very aware of our thoughts and work to reframe the stories we tell. And while we don't have so much control over emotions, they just come and go like clouds, we do have the ability to interpret them accurately and ask ourselves, do I want to act on this right now or not? So we have a tremendous amount of control, and changes in one will influence the other. And I'll just give you an example from myself. So I am a person who needs to exercise a lot. And that was easier pre-pandemic, but now that we spend more time on Zoom, I don't run around campus as much. I don't walk the aisle in workshops. I got to stand here to stay on the camera. And I don't know, everything feels busier, and I am exercising a lot less than I used to. And I know on a day when I skip the gym, if I get to work and something doesn't go my way, I'm a lot more reactive. I don't handle it quite as well. And on a day when I go to the gym and at the end of an hour feel like I left some of my nervous energy, irritation, frustration on the floor, when somebody comes and says, so-and-so said whatever, or this happened, the story I tell about it is softer. So that's a really simple example. Sharon exercises. She has a better time, easier time controlling her thoughts, which really does help me control my irritation, frustration, etc. We're going to see lots of interventions in all three of these places. That, in fact, is at the heart of resilience, especially behaviors and thoughts, because I think those are the ones we have the most control over. That said, as uncomfortable dealing with emotions are, many of us were taught stuff those down as deep as you possibly can, right? Even though that's what we're told, the honest truth is, I am frustrated. What should I do with that frustration right now is an amazing skill to learn, right? As opposed to, I'm frustrated, I'm going to lash out, which is often what happens. So we're going to see that model again and again. Now, we're going to start by looking a little bit at the thoughts or the stories we tell. And this comes from the work of Albert Ellis, who is one of the first people who started to talk a lot about how our thoughts drive our behaviors and what we can do about it. There is a whole field now of positive psychology. Martin Seligman is one of the major players in that field that you may have read one of his books or seen them on the shelf in the OITE libraries. Albert Ellis sort of established some of the early work that led to that. So we are all natural born storytellers. ABCs, something happens, activating event, you could call it an adversity, okay? I open an email, my paper got rejected, okay? There's an activating event. Now, the honest truth is there are some consequences of that. I'm gonna have to pause, look at the reviews, do a lot of extra work, slow things down, change my schedule in the research group. There's some consequences. But in between the activating event and the consequences is the story I tell or the beliefs. Oh, see, I'm not good enough, or everyone's out to get me, or if only I had had more help, I wouldn't have gotten these reviews. We tell a story about it. That story can amplify the consequences or soften the consequences, right? Often, if we're unaware of our stories, it amplifies the consequences. So I'll use another example. I don't do well on an exam. Oh, I am in trouble. This is going to impact my ability to get a postbac. I'm never going to get in. I'm going to struggle to get into grad school too. My career is over. I've been wanting to do this since I was a child, but it's not going to work out. Right? That's an amplified story. That bad grade is an issue, and it comes with its own consequences, but I just amplified the consequences. Now, that goes together with emotion. So if I start telling a story of, Sharon, you are lousy, you will never succeed, you weren't meant to do this, and you should probably leave NIH today, that's going to drive a lot of uncomfortable and unhelpful emotions. So we have to put them together. So if you think about it, we walk through the day and some good things happen and some not so good things happen and some really irritating things happen. So life and work is a series of hassles and uplifts. Things that felt good. Somebody thanks us for helping with an experiment, tells us we did a great job, thanks us for it genuinely. So there are some uplifts. We open an email and it says, congratulations, you got a travel award, join us at ASCB. So there are some uplifts in our day and there are some hassles. It drives emotions. And rather than thinking about emotions as good or bad, I know we sometimes think, well, happy is good and sad is bad. Let's think about it instead as comfortable and uncomfortable. But those emotions come with a story, right? And so it's not really feelings. It is thoughts and feelings. Things happen. We tell stories. Those stories come with a whole bunch of feelings. And that drives our attitudes and our behaviors. I am feeling really irritated and I don't have any patience right now. I go to a meeting, I don't listen at all. 2 days later, my boss says, did you get to that thing we talked about Wednesday? And I'm like, oh, damn, I was looking at cat videos on Instagram, right? I wasn't paying any attention. I was too angry or too distracted or too upset to hear. So our thoughts and feelings drive our attitudes and our behaviors. We can persist or give up. We can engage or withdraw. And those behaviors can help or be unhelpful, right? Like I said before, resilience is about knowing how and when to persist, right? Now, the idea is that we are aware of this, okay? So first of all, we are aware of our thoughts and feelings. Second of all, that we interpret them accurately. It's not just that we interpret them, it's that we interpret them accurately. I like to say to myself now, just because I think it doesn't make it so, right? I can think somebody's out to get me, and really, there was just an email that didn't get sent. I can think my boss didn't appreciate me, and really, it could be that they just were busy and didn't have a moment. I can think all kinds of things. They might be accurate, they might not be. I can feel all kinds of emotions. I can ignore them or I can act on them. So it's accurate interpretation and then regulation. What do I do and say in return or in response? So we really have to be aware of this model and constantly saying, okay, what are the stories I am telling myself right now? Are they helping? Is that story helping or hurting? How is it going along with emotions? Are they comfortable or uncomfortable? And what am I going to do about it? And this model, the key thing is we can use it either way. So let me go back. You can really work it backward. So I could notice lately I'm totally disengaged. I'm not going to things in my research group. When people say, hey, do you want to go to a seminar? I say, no, I'm way too busy. When they say, hey, do you want to have lunch? No, I'm way too busy. I sort of hide from my PI. I know when they're going to be around and I make sure not to be around. So I could work this backward. Suddenly I am withdrawing. Okay, let me work it backward. What's going on for me? What stories am I telling? What am I feeling, right? And can I do something about it? And the answer is almost always yes. That doesn't mean every problem can be solved. We face huge, big issues, and some things are not very much in our control, but how we respond to them is in our control. So 2 key take-home messages. Number 1, if we ignore our emotions, we will make decisions that are emotion-driven and not logic-driven. Now, every once in a while, an emotion-driven decision doesn't hurt us, right? But often it does, especially because we often make them in anger, frustration, embarrassment, etc. Number 2, if we work it backwards, we can build that awareness that we need. And so 2 things to keep in mind from this model. We are going to spend next week, 2 weeks from now, in depth on thoughts and a little bit about how feelings synergize with those thoughts, and then we'll keep building on it as we go through the material. So resilient learners are curious and kind to themselves. 2 things. We're curious, i.e., why am I behaving that way right now? Over the long term, would it benefit me to change a little or a lot? What gets in the way of my change? Is it perfectionism? Is it imposter fears? Is it anxiety? Is it fear of my PI because this just I haven't gotten to know them well enough and this just isn't feeling like the right environment for me right now? What can I do about it? So curious and kind. Curious is that self-awareness piece, and kind is that self-compassion piece. Not enough. The next step is that we are willing to explore new ways forward when we see unhelpful thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that get in the way. When we look and say, this in particular is not helpful, what can I do about it? Then we are on the way. There is a huge literature on reframing unhelpful stories, and we're going to talk a lot about reframing accurately, okay? One of the things is our first inclination is to either go really hard on ourselves and think it'll push us, or to blame it all onto someone else and say, this isn't us, it's someone else. And we want to figure out really how it really is for us. So I'm going to hit home on that right now, that concept. So this is based on the work of Marshall Rosenberg, who came up with a model for resolving conflict, and it's based on the work of really great leaders in the civil rights and justice movement. It's based on the work of Reverend Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi, and it's really a model for resolving deeply entrenched conflict. They say in the model that we can talk in one of 2 ways, like a jackal or a giraffe. Now look at that jackal, and that bird is not going to have a good day, right? That jackal sort of tear down. right? I'm sure at moments of their life, jackals are sweet and beautiful, but generally if we saw a jackal, out in the wild, we wouldn't be that excited to go up and pet it. So you can think of jackal language like aggressive, tear down language. And then they point out that we can talk like a giraffe. Now, they picked giraffe as the animal because the giraffe has the largest heart of all land-moving animals. It's like some 14 kilograms. Also, if you think about it, the giraffe has such a tall neck that it sees over the tree canopy. So I like to think of the giraffe as like able to see a lot as it makes a decision. Now, I don't think we'd really want to get too close to a giraffe either. The honest truth is that they probably have their very aggressive moments, and we certainly wouldn't want to be trampled by one. But if you think about it, that idea of very tall, big-hearted, broad view is a great model to keep in mind. And they point out in nonviolent communication that we can talk like a jackal or like a giraffe. But we have two kinds of conversations happening. Out, meaning I'm having a conversation with Uli, right? Or in, I'm having a conversation with Sharon. I can jackal on myself. I can tell a truly harsh, unhelpful, unkind, disrespectful story to myself. And that's sort of about blame. Oh, Sharon, how could you have not done well in biochem and you didn't get help? And then it happened even more in your exam. And now everybody is looking at you and thinking that you're a lousy graduate student and they didn't want you anyway. And now you're probably going to fail out of grad school. That would be a beautiful jackal story told exactly how it happened when I was told I didn't pass my qualifying exam. Actually, to reframe, I passed a third of it. Okay, so that would be a jackal story. Now, I could instead tell a giraffe story. Whoa, this is a really disappointing piece of news. It is a setback. I thought I was studying the right way. I thought I was working the right way. I need to regroup. I am embarrassed today, but I need to give myself a little bit of time, and then I need to talk to some people and decide to try again. I really want to do this. That is helpful and kind and open, and it's sort of about accountability. I messed up, or maybe somebody else messed up, right? Sometimes other people contribute, but it's a much kinder story. We can tell jackal stories about ourselves or giraffe stories about ourselves. Now, when we teach this to mentors, we say, remember, it goes the other way too. You can jackal down on your fellow, or you can build them up and talk to them in giraffe language. But I thought a lot about it, and I realized that the model doesn't totally work. There's one more way to think about things, and I picked the ostrich because I learned that ostriches put their head in the sand. I now learn that's not the case. They put their head down, but it's not actually in the sand. Ostriches hide, right, to protect themselves. And if you think about it, it's really complicated because maybe it's helpful for a few minutes at the beginning. I get that email. I am way too emotional to go and talk to anyone on my committee. I certainly don't want to tell my advisor who thinks I'm coming back to lab, but now I'm not. I'm getting to do my exam again, right? It's not the right time. So it's helpful in a moment to just tell an ignore story, but eventually it's unhelpful, right? In many ways, it's disrespectful to myself and others because I'm hiding what's going on. So think about it. Do you tell yourself more jackal stories, more giraffe stories, or more ostrich stories? None of us pick one over the other two. We tend to be a mix, but we certainly often prefer one over the other. In my family, we motivated each other a lot around what could go wrong. If you don't do that, this will happen. It sort of comes naturally to me. I call it motivation by catastrophe, right? But it's a really jackal way to go. So when I'm stressed, I choose jackal, right? And I would benefit sometimes by choosing ostrich, letting a little bit of the heat pass, and then finding some inner jackal, inner giraffe. We all benefit from using all three of these modes. Jackal really lightly. Some small amount of Jackal might mean we practice our talk 3 more times, and it goes incredibly well. And we're like, so glad I was hard on myself. So I'm not saying there's no place for Jackal, but there is a place for a softer Jackal. And I'm not saying there's no place for ostrich. Sometimes we got to ignore for a little bit. Sometimes we ignore for a long time because of a situation. All right. So we have to be thoughtful about how we approach setback and engage with our distorted self-talk. And I took out the emotion one, but it goes there too. So we're actually up to 6. I'll fix that slide before we send it up. The next thing in resilience is developing our growth mindset. So I want you all to just fill in the blank. I am not good at something for yourself. All right. You can put it in the chat. You don't have to say it out loud, those of you in the room, but if you feel like it, go right ahead. But just fill in the blank. I am not good at giving talks, writing, talking with my PI, saying no. I would say, and have always said, I'm not good at math, which is one of the reasons why I struggled so much in grad school, had a very narrow view of my ability, and I needed some math skills to make it through. Now, instead, just add the word yet. I am not good at public speaking yet. I am not good at math yet. I am not good at talking to my PI and being assertive yet. This work on mindsets comes from Dr. Carol Dweck, and what she teaches us is that we walk through life with 2 types of mindsets. Fixed, oh, my skills are my skills. I can't improve at things that are hard for me. It just is. I'm not good at math. It will always get in the way. Or a growth mindset. Well, math doesn't come easy to me, and I'm going to have to study hard, and I'm going to have to really, really push at this, but it's important, and if I work at it, I am capable of growing and learning. So a growth mindset you could think of as the power of yet, meaning I have work to do, right? I'm going to have to use resources. I'm going to have to practice, but I can get there. That is not to say we will all develop every skill equally. We are all a mix of come easies and come hards, and it is really important to remember that. So in fact, let's talk about the hallmarks of a growth mindset. And the first is that we believe we can grow and learn whether something comes easy or not to us, right? So we have come easies and come hards. Now, a true growth mindset means we work hard on the come easies as well, right? Star basketball players, star poets, star scientists, star anything, work hard at their skills, right? They practice, they work, they grow, and they learn. But fair to say, when something comes hard to us, we're less likely to work at it. Right? It doesn't feel good. It comes with those unhelpful emotions. I'm embarrassed, right? I feel like I should know this. So a hallmark of a growth mindset is we believe we can grow and learn, and we accept that we are a mix of come easies and come hards. It means we are open to new approaches and ways of tackling problems when we get stuck. I have tried it this way 3 times. I am convinced it's not working. How else can I do it? 2 questions to ask yourself. Why would it work this time if it did not work the last time? Sometimes we come up with a reason and we want to try one more time the same way. Sometimes we say, oh, really good point. How am I going to do it different? And that leads to the second question. Is there a different approach? Is now the time? A true growth mindset means we're not stuck in our ways. We're willing to try another approach. Not too soon, right? Right? Not immediately sometimes, right? But we're willing to try other approaches. Number 3, going back to that whole thing about why we don't ask for help. A growth mindset means we ask for help and use resources to promote learning. right? We all have this idea we should do it ourselves. So instead, I'm going to ask you, rather than just saying, oh, I should always use resources, I'm going to ask you to just remember that story, Goldilocks. Some of you who grew up in this country probably heard the Goldilocks story. This little girl goes into a cabin and there are 3 beds, and one is too hard and one is too soft and one is just right. There's porridge and one is too hot and one is too cold and one is just right. I've told this to people who grew up in other countries and they say, oh, it's not Goldilocks, it's the story of so-and-so. It's a pretty common fable, I think, and story that people learn to teach us things. The Goldilocks rule when it comes to asking for help is not too soon, but not so late that we've really damaged ourselves. We give a thought, should I try this on my own first before we go and get help? But the second part of it is because we work in dangerous environments, many of us, and we work in environments where some things cost a hell of a lot of money. We say, does the context mean I should get help sooner? Before I load the centrifuge wrong and it walks all across the lab, possibly hurting somebody, should I ask for help? So the Goldilocks rule, too soon, too late. What is the context? Another hallmark of a growth mindset, there are 2 parts in everything, process and outcome. Outcome is what happened. Process is what we did and learned along the way. So we can have a really disappointing outcome, but acknowledge we learned a lot along the way, acknowledge that we did a really good job. And in some things, that is the case because of the system, like papers getting accepted, like admissions to various graduate or professional programs, jobs, etc. Sometimes there are many, many highly qualified people, right? Sometimes it's a great paper, wrong journal. Right? So outcome is what happened. Process is how we did along the way. Now, we have to focus on both. We can't always have a bad outcome. If I took my qualifying exam and failed it 3 times, there is no going forward, right? So it can't be that we're always focused on outcome. Well, I studied more, I practiced more, I feel good about it, right? Sometimes process and outcome have to go together. But we tend to ignore process. One of the reasons why a lot of trainees say, I won't talk to my PI or I won't go talk to the head of my thesis committee or my program director is, I probably won't get what I asked for. That's the outcome. But the process of learning to be assertive can be freeing and it can bring a lot of power. So we have to be willing to look at process and outcome. Not one at the exclusion of other, but both of them. The next thing in a growth mindset is we learn from mistakes, ours and others. So that's a hard one. So I like to come up with a simple rule. So I get frustrated a lot. My frustration tolerance or ability to sit with frustration isn't all that great. It's better than it used to be, but I still have a lot of learning in that area. And I couldn't quite wrap my head around how to do that. And then I like these if-thens. I learned them in some other thing. If this happens, then we'll do this. It came out of actually some of our proteomic research. If we see this, then we'll do that. And then I started to say, okay, if I get caught in frustration, then what am I going to do? And I think this gives us a way to learn and find our growth mindset. If I'm frustrated, if I'm embarrassed, if I feel ashamed about what happened, then I'm going to take a break, take a walk, journal for a moment, take a deep breath, go talk to a mentor. And then I will address the mistake. The problem is we address the mistake when we're caught in all of those nasty, uncomfortable, ugly emotions, right? They're telling us that we need to pause for a moment. They're telling us something about what happened. But if we act in the middle of them, we are not always acting in a resilient way, and we make it worse. So I just like to say, if, then I will take action. Usually my then right now is I'm going to stop talking when I get frustrated. Whatever is in my mind comes out. It's not helpful at all to anyone around me. It's not even helpful to myself. So if I find myself really frustrated and talking like a jackal, then I'm going to get quiet for a moment, sit down and take a deep breath. Almost always I solve the problem. Not immediately. Sometimes I realize it's a big, messy problem. Sometimes it's a small one, usually that I can't find my phone or my coffee on the way to work. Right? The number of times I have wasted 20 minutes looking for a cup of coffee right in front of me. Why? Because I got caught in the mistake of not preparing on time. I started to get wrapped up in the unhelpful emotions, can't think straight. So that's the next part of a growth mindset. And the last one we are going to talk about a lot in Unit 4, and that is feedback never is fun, except for when they tell us, we love you, you're great, everything about you is great. Not much learning there, right? If we're trying to learn, we would like some input that gives us places to grow and learn. Feedback is very, very hard to take. It's also very, very hard to give. And the last part of a hallmark, the last hallmark of a growth mindset is that we learn how to manage feedback when it lands in an uncomfortable way. And that's going to be Unit 4. We have to talk about the stories we tell and assertiveness before we can talk about feedback. Feedback is a pretty advanced skill, especially when it comes from someone who is important to our career, someone who might write us a letter, who decides whether we're going to stay in the group, etc. So we'll talk about that later. All of us are a mix of fixed and growth mindset. We might go towards one more than the other, right? But we generally are a mix. Often Jackal language goes along with a fixed mindset. I'm not good at this. I'm just not. I never will be, but not always. So you can play around with those two models together. So we want to cultivate and maintain a growth mindset in areas that really matter to us. Remember that model at the beginning, we become a disillusioned learner. What are we going to do about it? Really, if you think about it, that's when growth mindset matters the most. Do I give up or keep going? If I keep going the exact same way, will it really change anything? So we have to decide, do I want to hold on? Same thing. And then we want to really help our peers and colleagues and mentees do the same. There's a lot here in questioning our beliefs about seeking help, using resources, and receiving feedback. I already raised that before, and it's going to come up again and again. Because the only way to really grow and learn is to lean into some of those uncomfortable moments. That is not to say that your PIs and mentors don't need to develop skills in giving feedback in a more kind, open way, which is why we teach you a set of skills and we teach them an overlapping set of skills. And my hope is you will do this when you have summer interns or people in your group. So those are the first things, and none of this will happen without this bullet, that we develop our stress management and well-being practice. You can just remember this, to do well, we have to be well. And I'm going to teach you one last model, and then we're going to do a bit of a well-being assessment. And this comes from the work of Dan Siegel, and I really love this model. So he talks about the fact that our nervous system is constantly firing, cycling, right? And it can be really sort of at the appropriate level, a calm, thoughtful, logical, trying to solve a problem. Or it can be in this really hyperactive, firing, lots of activity, lots of story being told, lots of things going on in your head. Or you can sort of give up and you're not trying to solve the problem. And he calls that place where we function most effectively our window of tolerance. That is where we find our creative problem-solving self. I can find my coffee cup and get out to work on time or deal with the fact that I'm going to be late when I am calm enough to think it through. When I am just frantically frazzled, running around, I can't find that damn coffee. I started late. It's because of the cat, right? I blame it on everybody, right? I can't solve the problem. The beauty is it's a window, so you can open it wide or you can slam it shut. But the nice thing is if you notice it closing, you can step back and say, what can I do to open it? The zone or window of tolerance is where we acknowledge mistakes. It's where we find a growth mindset. It's where we can repair relationships with people after an argument. It's where we can respond productively to stress. I have a big, important deadline. I am frazzled right now. What will help me lose that frazzle and refocus again? So I think that it is a really good model, and it comes back to self-awareness. So what does your reactive zone look like? My reactive zone looks like me talking to nobody in particular in a very Jackal way. It involves a huge amount of activity. Maybe yours looks like silence, right? People ask you questions. Can I help? No, I'm fine. What does yours look like? And then what does your depleted zone look like? And this one is critical because burnout is essentially depletion that goes on for a long time. So what does your burnout look like? On Sunday night, are you excited to go back to work or pretending you don't have to, right? And wishing you didn't have to? So one of the key things is self-awareness, but the second key thing here are early warning signs, right? So what is it that tells me I'm being pretty reactive? I'm heading into my not so helpful reactive zone. Or what are the warning signs that I'm depleted? Anytime we take care of ourselves, we open the window of tolerance, right? But we have to find the right ways to do that. Which brings us to the next part of this, which is a model for well-being or wellness. You can use either one. I personally like the words well-being or the phrase well-being better than wellness. Essentially, the things we do and don't do to take care of our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health. There are many other dimensions of well-being discussed by researchers: occupational well-being, environmental well-being, financial well-being. We're going to focus on these. We folded lots of other elements into these 4 quadrants, okay? Wellness is a foundation for resilience. So we're going to do this quick assessment, but we are going to do it through the lens of awareness and self-compassion. So it isn't, I always do this. It isn't, oh, I'm really terrible if I don't do this. Just some light awareness. If you think of number 1 being never and number 5 being always, where do you fall on I do my best? Not I always do this, but I do my best. So physical well-being, get enough sleep, which shockingly is 7 to 9 hours. Ludicrous for me to say that in a room full of scientists, right? People email at all hours. We get up and work at all hours. Like, right, we have to remember that our nervous system cleans itself while we sleep, right? And we need sleep to be healthy. Eat balanced, nutritious meals, avoid excessive use of caffeine, avoid excessive use of alcohol and other drugs of abuse. Get regular exercise, which is 3 times a week at least. Regular health care, and take care of ourselves when we are sick, need rest, or just need a break. How often do you do these things? How are you, what poked at you? Oh, I'm not doing so well in that area, right? Why did she list that? From a place of curiosity and self-compassion, right? All right, so just sort of assess where you're at. And next, we're going to talk about mental health. Now, interestingly, while we struggle in this area, we also have a lot of pride when we do a good job in this area. But boy, a lot of stigma comes with taking care of our mental health. And that is so unfortunate because we really as a community have to support each other in taking care of their mental health. So the stigma around this really needs to go away. So let's think for a moment. I do my best to avoid getting caught up in perfectionism. Perfectionism is an impossible place to reach. There's no such thing as perfect. Furthermore, a lot of things don't even need to be perfect. They need to just be good or good enough. Perfectionism drives procrastination, which drives us to get caught. Perfectionism is really something to think about, yet we wear it as a badge of honor. Oh, I'm successful because I'm a perfectionist. We have in our mental health series a webinar on perfectionism. We will have a skills group at some point this year on perfectionism. The second, I focus on the present versus rehashing the past or worrying about the future. Am I constantly telling an old story that's holding me back? Am I constantly ignoring where I am right now to worry about where I need to get? In some element of this, you can think about living in the present moment, being mindful of what's happening right now, avoiding negative or deceptive self-talk. We'll talk a lot about that next time. Practicing affirmations and realistic positive self-talk. Not everything will be okay. I'm so great. I'm always great. That's empty, right? That's like unhelpful giraffe language in many ways. That's totally ostrich language because we're never always great and not everything is going to be great. We deal with hard things. We don't get everything we want. So a more realistic self-talk. I'm in a tight spot right now. I'm going to need some support. I'm going to need to try this again. I need to pick the right time. I need to face a hard decision, whatever self-talk. But also some self-affirmations. I have done hard things before. I will do this. There are resources here for me. Avoid judging yourself compared to others. How well do you do with that? And allowing yourself time to explore and learn about new things, not just in work, hobbies, things we love to do. Do I throw myself into something I really enjoy outside so I can shut off my work brain and turn on my me brain? And then really back to that idea of stigma, I am open to counseling as a tool to maintain and improve my health and well-being. I think that there is a lot of stigma around elements of mental health. The honest truth is there's a lot of stigma around taking time to take care of ourselves in general in science, and we'll talk about that a little bit towards the end. Now, heart health, I don't mean cardiovascular health, although that is very important. I mean emotional health. Have we accepted that we are a mix of emotions, and I'm open to them and I allow myself to feel them? Many of us grew up in communities and families that said, stuff it down. If you're not happy, don't speak up. Or, you know, big boys don't cry, right? Oh, girls are just there to be happy and helpful. Like there are so many gendered pieces of information around emotions that it's hard to be really emotionally literate for many of us. A big part of emotional health is the ability to reach out, but a big part is the ability to communicate our needs and feelings directly and honestly. That assertiveness piece, you could probably put it in mental health as well, to be totally honest. Some of these you could put in different places here. Make time to spend with friends and family, in quotes, because you get to define family. Right? I have my family of origin and I have my family of choosing. I allow myself time to engage in activities that are fun and relaxing, and that goes along with avoiding extreme use of my phone as a coping tool and avoidance strategy. I mean, we have a built-in way to avoid our hard feelings. It's called surfing the internet, doom scrolling, watching whatever we like to watch on our phone. So I think that that's a really key part of our health and well-being. And then finally, that piece about compassion, and notice it says for myself and others. Many of us have a much easier time being compassionate to others, not so easy to ourselves. So how do you rate yourself in terms of your emotional health? And now I want to end with the fourth quadrant, our spiritual health. By spiritual health, I do not mean religion, although for some of you, religion and spiritual health go hand in hand, and you find your spiritual connection in the mosque, in the synagogue, in the church, in the ashram, in the pew somewhere. Some of us find it outdoors in nature. Some of us find it through music. I think I find it in the kitchen. Put me in the kitchen and let me cook for people I love, and suddenly all of the world feels a little bit softer and better, and every problem seems a little smaller and softer. So each of us finds our connection to something bigger than us in a different way, and we each define that differently. I know science at times can really stress logic over religion and the necessary belief systems that come, or not necessary, the belief systems that come with our religion. For some of us, religion is a very big part of our well-being, and we want to find a way to hold on to that as we go through all of these work experiences. Without spiritual health, it's very hard to have physical health, mental health, and emotional health. So there are a bunch of things here, right? I try my best to find resources, practices, activities, people, and places that nurture my spirit, to reflect on and invest in what's meaningful to me by reading things and watching media that inspire me. Sometimes we want to just watch an empty TV show, and sometimes we need a moment to really inspire ourselves again and remember what it is that makes us feel connected. I think we really have just lived through a time of intense disconnection, and we've taken some habits from that time, right? The fact that, I mean, it's beautiful that there are a lot of people on Zoom, because some of them are across the country in other time zones, but some of them are one floor up, right? And this period of disconnection that we live through, staying at home, keeping away from people, really keeping our distance, I think has made it sometimes hard to connect with these broader things. My favorite one, I allow myself time to just be. I am a human being, not always a human doing. We all have very, very long to-do lists, and in science, it can just grow. Right? It's very easy to add one more thing. And sometimes we have to add one more thing, but sometimes we need to pause and watch the birds totally attack the sunflowers, or the sunset, or the water, or our kid playing on the floor with our partner. Sometimes we just need to pause and be. So when it comes to well-being, I think it's important to self-reflect. It's important to have a moment of self-compassion and realistic goal setting. Sometimes I look at all of this and I'm like, I'm not doing that, or that, and I better fix it right away. Not that approach. Too much doesn't ever get changed very quickly. We have to pick key things and move, and that's one of the reasons why the groups are so helpful. I think it helps us put this in perspective. I want to acknowledge in many ways the elephants that are in this room, right? So I took that picture, by the way. So that was an amazing moment for me. And the elephant in the room, right, is the big thing that nobody talks about. So let's be honest, in science, we don't teach well-being. We just say work all the time, right? And we do say a lot of things like you should know this and people should be able to do that. And, the cream rises to the top and everybody needs papers to get where they want to go. We send a lot of messages that are very anti-well-being. I think that we are shaped by the culture of science. We are also shaped by messages from our families, right, where we've grown up, who we've hung out with, and those messages can make it hard. So if we want to learn about well-being and taking care of ourselves, we're going to have to question those messages a little bit. And these headlines make us know that we should be changing our culture. None of us want these headlines. We do not want, right, researchers facing shocking levels of stress, burnout, and mental health problems in biomedical doctoral students, the intersection of incivility in research groups, of racism and disparities within our workspaces. None of us wish to be a part of that culture. And while change happens top down, it also comes from every area of an organization, and learning about well-being and helping others can really make a difference. We can address these elephants both personally and as a community, and one really easy thing is by helping others take care of themselves as you help you take care of yourself. Small change can add up really in a big way. I think accountability buddies are a huge thing. I have exercised now for a long time because of Lisa Kiley, who only exercises because of me. So I don't want Lisa to text me and say, "Where were you, Sharon? I was there, weight in hand, at 6 a.m. Where were you?" So I sort of grudgingly go, and then I am so happy that I did. And she made me do it in some way. And then I say, "I only came because of you." And she said, "Well, I only came because of you." It really works. If we were mean to each other or too hard on ourselves, if we didn't know how to say, "Sorry, today I have a headache and I can't come," an accountability buddy would be a bad thing, right? But in the right way, it's a really good thing. And one way to do that is to come next week and talk about this material, because I think it's really hard. I think that so many of us want to make change. We are facing a very hard fall coming up in this country, and let's be honest, globally, it's heartbreaking to read the news. I almost cannot open my news feed at this point. It is just full of so many horrific things happening. So we all are going to need to double down on taking care of ourselves and each other. You know, I said to do well, we have to be well, but the honest truth is to treat others well, we have to be well ourselves. And so we have some change. The next thing to do about resilience is to do things that bring meaning and happiness to our day, our week, our month, our year. Now, let's be honest, for many of us, our work is very important. It brings meaning. It sometimes brings happiness. Sometimes it brings heartbreak when things don't work quite the way we want. There are high moments and low moments, but very few of us can get through everything in terms of our well-being simply by focusing on work. I assume there are some people in some window of time that can get much of what they need from work, but most of us need a lot more than work. So just think for a moment about what brings you happiness and connection and a feeling that you're going to be all right, because that adds to your resilience. And then go home and make and share with others a wellness collage. And Uli is going to add a challenge that in the email when she sends out the slides, if I get 100 of these, I'm going to make a donation to some charity. We'll vote on it in the next one. But I got to get 100 wellness collages or well-being collages. This is a great reminder of who we are, what helps us stay well, what brings us joy, also what we're grateful for. Gratitude has been shown through many studies to improve resilience. We can be really irritated and still grateful for something around us, and it helps us see the good. Our brains are hardwired to see negativity, so when we push it to be grateful and see good, it really helps. It's a really great reminder of the power of community. Last year's group chose World Central Kitchen, or maybe I did. This year we'll vote on 2 or 3 different things. So this is mine. I haven't updated it. I should. I swapped out tennis for aquatic running over the last few months because my wrist has been bothering me, and I realized I was terribly grouchy, and that tennis works me out in a certain way that other things I do doesn't. That's my son and my wife. Many of us, our family is such a big part of our well-being. But up there is my friend Allison, who travels the world and who I don't always get to see, but 5 minutes of Allison time can make me feel so much more grounded. When I say I need to complain about work, She always asks a question that makes me realize what part of work I like, and I do the same back. Nature and cooking. I told you I love cooking. I also love biking, although now I use an electric bike much more than that bike. You all have pictures and they're different, okay? I'm in an art museum. You might be at the ballet playing music with your, your band at church, wherever. All of you have a totally different set of pictures, but we all have things that make us feel intensely good and just a tiny bit more willing to face the hard things. And sometimes a lot more willing to face the hard things. So make a well-being collage. Behaviors make a difference, and just making that collage in PowerPoint will make you feel good. Somebody told me they saw it once written as a dopamine delivery system, right? You look at pictures that make you happy and you have a little hit of dopamine. So I have no idea. I just like to call it a well-being collage. There are 4 pro-resilience behaviors that we know about from research. Journaling, and I'm going to give you a set of journaling prompts. You are also all going to get a workbook written by many, many staff in the Wellbeing Center. I think that it is an incredible resource. It gives you a lot of journaling prompts. Journaling lets us be with our thoughts and feelings without worrying what others think about us, right? It's a totally private way of working through things. It also lets us see patterns and growth over time. So you think, oh, I'm not making progress. And then you realize, yes, I am. And it's really helpful. Mindfulness. That's the idea of being with your thoughts and feelings and not judging them in the moment. And mindfulness can be a deep, slow breath. It can be a quiet walking meditation. It can be learning how to meditate on a pillow, using guided tools. A couple times a week, OITE sponsors meditation groups for fellows. They're all on Zoom. We also have a monthly journaling group, but you'll get a lot of opportunity to journal through the course. Community. We are hardwired to connect, and when we feel alone, it's very, very hard to be resilient. And then I want to say that in some times of our life, therapy can be an incredible pro-resilience tool. And finding a counselor who can just support us in exploring our helpful and unhelpful thoughts and feelings, exploring the trauma that holds us back, exploring the world situations that are keeping us up at night sometimes can make a big difference. So there are many resilience behaviors. Some cost money, some take a large investment of time. One that I think is good to start with if you're looking for an entree in is journaling. There's a large science on the benefit of journaling. There's actually studies in healthcare professionals. There are studies in academic settings. So the research is relevant to our community. There is the same, I should say, for all of these other things, but I am going to advocate for journaling for a moment. There are prompts here. You don't need to journal every day. You don't need to be on a set schedule, and you don't have to do it any right way. While there's literature that says doing it by hand is good, I have never been able to journal by hand, and I use a Google Doc, and periodically I save it, hide it, and start a new one because I need to change topics, or I'm a little bit worn down by what I was doing, or I just feel like that issue I've worked out. You can use the BRS prompts. I have a standard prompt when I want to journal because I know I'm out of sorts and I don't want to bring my grouch home. And that is something that went well today is, something that did not go as well as I had hoped is. I might journal for 3-4 minutes and then get on the bus. I gave you a series of 7 journaling prompts. Do none of them, do some of them, do whichever one feels good, do them a long time, a short time, whatever is right for you. Developing resilience is one of the foundations of educational career and life success. And asking for help is nearly always hard. None of us really want to acknowledge that we need help, but it's nearly always a part of the solution. So do whatever works for you this week. Try something different. Something you heard today, something in the well-being assessment. Come to the groups. They really do matter. And yes, they are a bit awkward at the beginning. Actually, for some people, they're a bit awkward all the way through. And think about it, a lot of learning happens when we're a bit uncomfortable. In fact, if we are totally in our comfort zone, we're not really likely learning all that much in the moment. That said, when it's a come easy, it is true that sometimes we can really grow and learn and feel really comfortable. But I think talking about these kinds of things is often pretty awkward, especially at the start. The small groups are September 30 from 3 to 4. There's going to be an in-person group in Building 2. There will be virtual groups on Zoom, and there is a virtual discussion group for trainees who identify as neurodiverse. I think all of these skills are hard, and I think that there are additional elements of hard for trainees with various elements of neurodiversity. I acknowledge that I won't do a good job all the time of bringing up all of the dimensions of difference. I will do my best to remember all of the dimensions of difference and how they play into all of this. Remind me, ask questions, send me emails afterward. You need to RSVP to join the groups. This is while my time is largely free, I have to have somebody at each group, and it costs us both planning and money. And so we ask that you please RSVP. And if you RSVP, please honor the RSVP and come. If you want to participate in the group for neurodiversity, email, and Uli will send information. So with that, I'm going to start by taking questions in the room. I'm also going to acknowledge that sometimes I love doing this in person, but I also think that it can be embarrassing to ask some questions in person. So if you want to just email it to me, it's sharon.milgram@nih.gov. I will not read out your name, and I will do my best to answer your questions. But if you want to grab the mic and ask, go right ahead. And with that, let me thank you. Welcome to the fall. I think today is a sign that the summer is coming to an end. It's definitely colder. So if you need to go, don't worry about it, but I will stay and answer questions. In the room first. All right, I will take some here. How do you know when to use the rule of opposites? You know, all of this, how do I know when to ask for help? How do I know when to try on my own? How do I know when to be an ostrich? All of this comes down to pausing after the fact and saying, how well did that go for me? So I generally think early on in making these decisions, if there's a mentor you really trust, that's a great way of figuring out. Journaling for 5 minutes, taking a walk, some deep breaths can help you figure it out, but it's really a matter of over time asking, how did that go? I'm going to talk about overcoming imposter fears next week. In the question is a comment about gender and being an underrepresented minority in science can drive imposter fears. I will talk a lot about how identity drives imposter fears, and we will talk a lot about that next time. Is how we respond to a barrier exacerbated by imposter fears. Absolutely. One of the reasons why we'll talk so much about imposter fears next week is they really are, I think, at the heart of a lot of our hiding. If we felt like we belonged and we had a right to take up a lot of space and a right to say, hey, wait a minute, I need something different, I think that we wouldn't hide nearly as much. So we really, as a community, need to talk about imposter fears. We need to support each other in addressing them. And next time we will see how, first of all, how they bubble up, how they come from outside, what causes them, and how to deal with them. How do we differentiate between an accurate representation of the situation versus a projection or an inaccurate one? That again comes with reflection after the fact. It comes with journaling. It comes with finding the right supports. So sometimes I am really pretty accurate in an assessment of a situation. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I realize it myself. Sometimes someone else points it out to me. A great question is there another story I could tell? Is there a different way I could be looking at this? And that can help. And when I find 3 or 4, it's a great reminder to pause, right? I think that that comes into play as we develop our mentoring and management skills as well. So those of you who are postdocs and thinking about mentoring others, right? We see something and then we tell a story, but maybe we're not telling the right story. Same thing when you look at yourself. Am I telling the right story? But over time, we do better and better at that. The more self-aware we are, the more we develop our emotional intelligence, which is our ability to read and work with our own emotions and our ability to do the same with others. The more we grow in those areas, the better we are able to decide how close to accurate is my story. Or we accept we have no idea how accurate it is, but we have these options, and the one that gives us the best chance of sorting out the story is this one. So sometimes we don't know, but we still can make better decisions about what to do next. How can we thrive if our mentors are the ones making it more difficult to cross a slippery bridge and take advantage of times we were open and honest? I do think, so, when I started to develop this course, I felt a little almost like a part of the problem. And I'm saying, oh, this environment is hard, toughen up and work with it. So I think that is why we've developed this parallel raising a resilient scientist, why at NIH we've tried to be thoughtful about helping people with research group reassignments and transfers, stepping in to help people protect themselves through the rights and responsibilities. We have to change the environment, and that is a part of it. But even fellows who work in an excellent environment where their PI is literally putting their hand out and saying, let me help you on the rocks, even there, we need these skills. So I've decided to teach them, knowing that I also have to work hard to change the culture, because sometimes it's not about our boss, it's about an internal barrier. So I agree, and I in Unit 5 will talk a lot about how to manage mentoring relationships, when to stay, when not to stay, how to choose the right place. If you look at the data on people's happiness with their boss, I'm talking about outside of science in general in this country, most people change positions because of their boss. A lot of us struggle with the way our boss behaves. In science, we haven't put a lot of energy into teaching people management and mentoring skills. Shame on us. We need to do better in that regard. So when it is your PI, you have to find other resources. You have to decide, can I, should I, how will I talk with them about this? And that will be like sort of come again through the whole course. How do you navigate scenarios where you feel good about the outcome and it went poorly, or the reverse, where you feel bad and it went well in others' perspectives? Sometimes people finish a committee meeting or a presentation, oh, that didn't go well, and somebody else like, I think it went great, and here's why. You should be open to your assessment and open to their assessment, and be curious about the differences. All right, you should say, okay, why am I satisfied with this, but others are telling me, uh-oh, or the other way? Why am I saying this didn't go well and somebody else is saying it did? curiosity and awareness and openness to multiple interpretations is probably at the key of all of that. Maybe we'll learn in later modules any tips in being kind to yourself. Yeah, we're going to talk, especially when having unhelpful thoughts, we are going to talk a lot about that. One of the best ways to be kind to ourselves is to start practicing some of these other well-being techniques, especially exercise and rest and getting away. Sometimes we cannot be kind to ourselves because we are exhausted. And also, it is so clear that exercise, and it doesn't have to be really hardcore. It could be just walking a little bit quickly. It is very clear that exercise is probably the best adjunct to our mental health out there beyond directly addressing our mental health. How do you be a giraffe without downplaying your true emotions? By being a little less judgmental. I am really frustrated right now. It's coming out in these ways. I have a right to be frustrated. That said, it's not helping, so how am I going to soften it? A giraffe isn't ignoring any of the not so great things that happen or emotions that are uncomfortable and feel really miserable in the moment. Giraffe is about being with it in a less judgmental way. You talked about people withdrawing when they lack resilience and are too stressed, cannot regulate their emotions. What about people that do the opposite of that? People that overwork themselves and get excessively busy. That is, again, you are correct. That is a hallmark of a lot of people's response to stress. Some of us underwork and some of us overwork. Some of us work hard but not smart. And again, it all starts with self-compassion. It all starts with awareness. In general, track what your day looks like, how long you work, how easy it is to unplug. If suddenly you are adding things and working more and avoiding things you used to do, it's time to sit down and say, what's going on for me? It's working that model I showed backwards. I think that is extremely hard to do on our own at the beginning, although some people say journaling gives them a big opening to that, and they start journaling and they see a lot. A lot of us really need to talk to others about that. So whether that is joining the resilience groups or a drop-in support group on your campus, one of the OITE programs here, you know, the drop-in groups, the 4-week groups, a lot of times we need a lot of help to figure out those patterns. And then sometimes we need to talk to somebody one-on-one, a mentor, a well-being advisor. If you're at NIH, OITE offers well-being advising one-on-one for fellows on all campuses. It can be going to student health or employee health on another campus. I think sometimes we need one-on-one help when we realize I am working to exhaustion and not sure quite why. There's somebody who makes a point that this workshop is really helpful. Fear and imposter, fear in general and imposter fears in particular are big obstacles. A question about whether I think imposter syndrome and fear at work decrease as we move up in our careers. And the answer is for some of us, yes, it's an early career experience. And for some of us, it is a regular ongoing challenge. We're all a little bit different. We all struggle with different stories. So while some people tell imposter stories, I tell catastrophe stories. And no, it's never gotten easier. I'm more aware of them and I say, oh, that's Sharon catastrophizing, right? In the dictionary, right next to catastrophizing is a picture of me, and now I know that. But we all have barriers to success. So I think that we each have to own our barriers and work on them. How to try to come out of the depleted zone. If the answer is rest, how long? I am not a healthcare professional. I am a cell biologist and an educator who has thought a lot about that material. Sometimes we need input from a healthcare provider when we're feeling really burned out and depleted. And so I want to be cautious about giving you an absolute model. You know, each of us is struggling with different things. Our paths are different, and so our vulnerabilities to burnout are greater or lesser. We work in environments that make it easier or harder. And so I think rather than giving a formula there, I'm going to say, yes, when we're depleted, it almost always, if not always, involves setting better boundaries and getting a break and embracing a true vacation, not one where we check in at work. That's one thing PIs can really help with, is no vacation penalties, right? Oh, we're gonna keep working on that paper while you're away. And then, wow, you've been working on it for so long, it's hard to walk away. So there are definitely times when we need to get away, but our culture has to make that easy for us. Can you give examples in conflict setting when talking like a jackal or giraffe? I think I'm going to wait on that question until we get to the assertiveness, where we will talk a lot about jackal and giraffe. There's a very long question. I thank you. It looks really important, about how do graduate students help change the culture of hierarchical science that's damaging to students and postdocs and other trainees. I think that small things within your research group, within your institute, within your graduate program, getting together at lunch and reading a paper or watching one of our tapes and talking about it. Maybe asking your administration, or if you're at NIH, asking OITE if you have an idea about a community building event or you wish something was different. Banding together to speak up, inviting others. When people make jokes, like it says here, you know, PI saying grad students don't need a good apartment because they're always in the lab anyway, you know, maybe you don't want to lecture that person, but saying, ouch, everyone has the right to good, safe housing. I don't know, small ways. We usually in the mental health series talk some about community well-being and culture change, and we'll be sure to do that again. I don't want to dismiss the really important concepts in that question, but you could talk about it for a very, very long time. How do we navigate a situation where a PI or mentor or boss doesn't have a good view of taking time for yourself? So sometimes we have to use other resources to get time. Sometimes we have to accept our bosses rolling their eyes in the moment. You know, somebody can say, well, I think that resilience course is silly, but that doesn't mean you can't go. It just means they think it's silly, right? So I admit that taking time away is a little bit harder if it's a long time, but there are usually people at an institution, certainly at NIH, if you're told that you're not allowed to take time off, we would want to hear from you as soon as possible so we could support you in having an important conversation. Part of this is assertiveness and boundaries. Those are harder in hierarchical situations, but they are not impossible. How do you make a decision on managing the pressure at work over love of science and still be successful? You know, I do think that there is a push and pull between I love this and I'm exhausted right now doing this. And we just accept there are all kinds of messy things in life. And science and our love of science and how long it takes to do good science is just messy, because we also need these well-being things and they take time. And yeah, most of us can't be two places in one time, and none of us have solved cloning yet, right? So we have to make choices. We accept that and we try to make the best choices in the moment. I'm going to talk about finding a suitable mentor in other places, but if you are, well, whether you're at NIH or not, if you go to our website, there is what is very long, I admit. I wrote a very long sort of data dump of everything that I think fellows should do to find healthy, good, positive research environments. There's a tape. I would direct you to there, and then if reach out some point if you want to talk about it more. Dealing with deeply rooted thoughts and behaviors can be very difficult. Can you speak a little about how quickly you can expect to see improvement in work after trying to implement some of these strategies? Because if you don't see change, it can be hard to keep going. I think that that's a really important point. So some things are really simpler, right? Just starting to recognize our unhelpful thoughts. I'm going to suggest on the next time we meet that you keep a log of your Jackal stories versus your giraffe moments versus your ostrich moments. Sometimes we see small change really quickly. Sometimes we see a big change really quickly. We realize that we'd like to say ouch to a comment somebody made to us, or we'd like to go to them and say that comment really hurt me. Not you hurt me, the comment hurt me, and I wanted to let you know that. Or we go to our PI and say, I do work hard and I want to work hard and I need a long weekend right now. I'm feeling really burned out, or my brother is coming, or this is happening. So sometimes an N of one thing happens and we're like, wow, I don't think I would have done that. I hear Sharon like in the back of my mind. But for the most part, I'm going to be honest and say that this is a lot of work. It is one reason to stick with the whole thing. It is one reason to try the groups. It is one reason to watch the tapes later if you need them. It is one reason to get some other support if you need it, because this is hard work and the culture of science has sent messages that are really challenging to let go of. You mentioned some ways of journaling, but sometimes there's a mind block and it's tough to get to it. When I'm totally blocked, but I know I feel out of sorts, first of all, self-awareness, my back starts to ache a little bit. When I am really out of sorts, there's some physical manifestations. I had a student who clicked his pen all the time. And one day I said, do you mind sharing what that's about? And he said, oh, if I'm clicking my pen, I'm really irritated. I was hoping you didn't notice. So he clicks his pen. I get a little bit of back, a little bit of backache. When you realize you're out of sorts, you could just start with, I feel out of sorts and I have no idea why, but here are some possibilities. You could doodle. You could write words. You could just say, I am frustrated, no idea why, so I'm going to go take a walk, and I hope while I'm walking, it becomes clear. I mean, anything that just unblocks us in the moment so we don't do something unhelpful. We don't go to RPI before we're ready. We don't argue with somebody in our group that we're just taking out our anger on them. My grouch almost never is directed towards the right person. It's just directed towards the person right near me in the moment. And I think that's true for a lot of us. So, there's a lot of things good for us that we don't do all the time, right? Like, I know that I should not be turning on my phone when I get up at 3 o'clock and can't go to sleep, but there's something, my nieces and nephews live in other time zones, and sometimes there's a picture of the baby and I want to see it for whatever reason right then when I know it's not good for me. We get to do things that aren't good for us. It's just that if we're in a pattern that's not good for us, we want to try to gently change that pattern. All right, last question. This is about policies around different rules about bereavement leave, grief. It's really complicated to handle these things in such a rigid environment. I agree. I think it's not just grief where it can be challenging. It's when we're struggling with our mental health and need a mental health day or a mental health week or mental health weeks. It's when we have something happening in our life that we just really need to put a lot of energy and attention into it. Science has been built on this model where we do science all the time. We think about science all the time. I saw a comment, so are we supposed to think about science in the shower or not? And the answer is, I don't know. Some days I think about science in the shower. Other days I think about other things. I think that we all need to decide how we fit into this. We all need to speak up about policies, you're welcome, that need to change. I think there's a lot that falls on administration. I think that there's a lot that falls on individuals. I think that it's messy to sort out which one can be changed right away. Science is very, very slow to change. But I have seen a lot of change in my time at NIH. Quite frankly, just the fact that there are 600 people who showed up today. This is like the 15th time we offered this course. So this is a lot of people. right? The fact that 1,000 PIs show up for the first one in the Raising a Resilient Scientist, and they actually stay for the work, for the small groups. They hate it and they stay. Culture is changing. At the American Society for Cell Biology, every year now, third year in a row, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative sponsors a well-being program through OITE. When I went to cell biology, there wasn't even career development. It was all about cell biology. So culture is changing. Is it changing fast enough? Some days I think yes, some days I think no, most days I think no. But maybe over time we will all be a part of changing. That clears the questions. And there are some people sitting in the room who I want to have a moment to chat with. So I'm going to say to everyone, have a great week, be well, take care, do something new this week, and let's see if we can hit 100 well-being collages. Thank you, everyone.